Thank you very much. Andrew, I'm going to hand straight over to Paul. The International Growth Centre is a joint venture between the LSE and Oxford, so we're happy to have the Oxford end to speak to us this evening.
Thank you. Development and the world's poor have been used for gesture politics by the West politicians again and again. I got so upset by that. That's what motivated me to write The Bottom Billion. Is this another example of gesture politics? No. Whatever it is, this is an important speech. It's important because embedded in it are very important decisions. Policies will change as a result of this speech. Important policies will change. So the issue is not, is this gesture politics yet again? It certainly isn't. The issue is, are the policy changes for better or for worse? And that's what I'm going to address tonight. And let me start with what is fresh in your mind, CDC. Right? I think a CDC, a CDB, could do better. Right? Indeed, the idea of public money invested in a fund of funds by private managers instructed to maximize the rate of returns, it is not beyond the wit of man to think of a radically better form for CDC. Right? So the question is whether the Secretary of State had come up with a better form. I think he has. First, he's opening the door to strategic investments. Strategic investments can gear up private sector, a future private sector investment. This is really important, and it was a shocking thing when CDC walked away from that. CDC didn't do strategic investments because it wasn't competent. It hadn't got the right staffing, but the concept of strategic investments is manifestly there. Secondly, the Secretary of State suggests that CDC could be used for guarantees. And this is, I think, a hugely important opportunity. Governor Bernanke, before he became Governor of the Federal Reserve, was a celebrated economist at Princeton, and he's most celebrated of all for a thing called the bad news principle, which is an analysis of what determines whether potential investors wait rather than committing to invest. And his key point is that it's not improving the upside doesn't cut the ice. The bad news principle shows that what really matters for moving from withholding commitment to actually committing investment is addressing the big downside risks. Now in Africa, where I work on, it's just full of big downside risks. We've now got to the point where the private investors, and a lot of private investment portfolios have been consulting me in the last few months, they're well aware that they need to shift portfolio to Africa. And they're well aware that there are big downside risks that they don't understand. And so at the moment there's a standoff. What can be done for those big downside risks? A joint effort in which African governments try to reduce some of those downside risks. What are the risks? The big risks are concerns about the future behavior of African governments. And so by building what economists call commitment technologies, African governments that are serious about attracting investment can reduce those risks. They can't eliminate them because they themselves have credibility problems. They just don't have access to really credible commitment technologies. But to the extent that they make a move and try to reduce risks in a credible fashion, then some sort of guarantees that cut off that tail of risk can be very highly geared with private investment. So opening the door to guarantees for private investors is a very big step. This can really gear up the investment flows. Power to borrow, absolutely. Not only does this very obviously gear up CDC's resources, it's also a discipline. because the credit rating on CDC borrowing will show whether the market thinks CDC is putting its money wisely or foolishly. And so, yes, CDC should borrow, and the temperature, the quality of its investment will be revealed by its by the interest rate it pays. Finally, sainthood. Should we demand sainthood of CDC managers? No. Can we demand something more of them than what we've actually expected of them? Decidedly, yes. Right? It is frankly offensive to pay people in the development business at parity with market rates in the financial sector, especially now that we're all concerned that remuneration rates in the financial sector are excessive. Nor is it remotely necessary. Let me give you just one very simple manifestation of the fact that people working in the financial sector want to have periods in their lives when they're actually doing something that is ethically manifestly worthwhile, even if that costs them money. JP Morgan, with whom I partner in running an annual workshop for African central bankers, JP Morgan set up in their London office a little unit for social enterprise. It was very small. They decided they'd create 4 posts. And of course, working in the social enterprise unit wasn't going to attract the mega bonuses. So they advertised just internally within JP Morgan, could they fill these 4 posts? They got 1,000 applications from within JP Morgan for those 4 posts. There's a tidal wave of people with the skills wanting to do something ethically more responsible with their lives. So we don't need to demand sainthood, but we can demand more than we have been demanding. So much for CDC. Let me turn to Andrew's second concern, which is opening markets, opening opportunities.